evening, and welcome to the Dreary Midnight Podcast. My name is Lisa, my pronouns are she, they.
My name is Celeste, my pronouns are she, her.
And today, what are we talking about?
We're gonna talk about Halloween.
Ooh, it's spooky season.
Spooky season.
Also, shout out to Epidemic Sound for all of our music stuff. So, Halloween traditions, because this is set to drop on October the 17th.
Yes.
And we're working on our Halloween special.
We're revving up for Halloween, and we have something fun planned.
Yes.
But for now, we can kind of ease into it.
Ease into
Talk
it.
about
That's a good
Halloween.
way to put it. All right.
You, Lisa, would probably know, but what do you know about the origin of Halloween?
So, as I recall, it's some sort of combination of All Hallows Eve / Samhain / All Saints Day.
It's a nice little amalgamation.
Yeah, because for those of y'all who aren't in the know, or maybe who are in the know, so many Christian holidays are literally just like amalgamations or just to the left of pagan holidays. Mm-hmm. So, as I recall, All Saints Day is right near Samhain on purpose, and I think Halloween is a few days before that on purpose.
Yeah, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty details on that.
All right, so what you got?
Halloween, a.k.a. All Halloween, All Hallows Eve, and All Saints Eve. It goes by many different names. Halloween is a contraction of All Hallows Eve, a holiday observed on October 31st, the evening before All Saints' Day or All Hallows' Day. The celebration marks the day before the Western Christian feast of All Saints and initiates the season of All Hallowtide, which lasts 3 days and concludes with All Souls' Day. In much of Europe and most North America, observance of Halloween is largely non-religious. So it's more like a Halloween season as opposed to just the one day.
Huh.
Yeah. Which is fun.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you get a lot of those, like, white Christian moms who are like, Halloween is of the devil, but it's like if it was initially part of a Christian saint or a Christian festival period, then is it really?
Exactly. So basically, like, from what I learned doing research for this episode is it was never a like satanic ritual. Actually, it was really largely religious, which is kind of funny because nowadays Christians who will not celebrate it because they think it's some sort of evil thing, it's like the complete opposite of that. It's supposed to be a remembrance of souls that have passed.
Cool. And so sort of like a Day of the Dead.
Yeah, a lot of cultures have that. Like I think the Philippines have it too. A lot of cultures around the world have similar, like souls days.
So it's sort of like the living on Earth souls and the no longer on Earth souls. The veil is thin between the two, and let's acknowledge that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And honor memory and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So how did it turn from, like, let's remember great granny who died into, like, this is demonic and we can't do it?
Well, first of all, I think with everything, that kind of has the Puritans, basically. When you come to America, when they came, it was like a huge tradition in Europe, but then when they came to America, it was kind of like we don't do that. But in the same vein that they didn't celebrate Christmas either.
Oh, yeah.
Nowadays, people don't have a problem with Christmas. Yeah. It's just Halloween because it's spooky.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
all right.
We'll rewind a little bit.
Okay, so rewinding all the way back to when?
To Samhain. Which is what you mentioned.
And also, we are saying it's Samhain because that is how it's pronounced. It's spelled like Samhain.
Yeah, Samhain, but it's a Gaelic word, and you know that the Gaelic alphabet is not... it's pronounced the same way.
So they use Latin letters, but the designation for sounds is different.
The most popular theory on the origin of Halloween is one that you already know, which is that the modern holiday of Halloween came from the Celtic festival of Samhain.
Okay.
So Samhain is a Gaelic word meaning end of the summer, and it was a pagan religious festival originating from the ancient Celts. So this festival is believed to have been a celebration of the end of the harvest and a time of preparation for the coming winter.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And would it still be like what we now call end of October?
Yeah, it was basically in between. It was like in the midpoint between the fall equinox and the winter solstice. So sometime in like early November.
Okay. So, yeah, that does map out to early November.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, but although I don't think they kept track of the calendar time like we do now.
So, I mean, obviously, that's why I say what we now call end of October, because it's like calendrics are different.
Exactly.
And calendrics is how a culture measures time. Currently, it is done with days and hours and weeks and months and minutes. But that was not always the case in ancient Rome. For example, it was by the last emperor. And so when they say like, oh, it's 100, they died in 100 BC or whatever. Like Cleopatra was in the 300s BC. No, they didn't say, well, like in 299 BC. They said like in the 4th year of Cleopatra's reign. And that's how time was kept. That was a digression.
I love your Lisa tangents. And I also
Fun
love...
tangents, Lisa!
Tangents, Lisa! And I also love how much you know about things.
That's just from a single semester of archaeology class.
How often do you think about the Roman Empire? Have you seen
I
that
studied
trend on
Greece,
TikTok?
so not as much.
Oh, man.
Anyway.
Okay, so, Samhain was the most important of 4 fire festivals that happened throughout the year.
Okay.
And it took place, once again, fall equinox and winter solstice, so sometime in November. In early November.
Okay.
So it was believed that during this time, the barrier between the physical world and the spirit world grew thinner and would break down. And the souls of those who had died were believed to return to visit their homes, and those who had died during the year were believed to journey to the other world.
Okay.
So it was basically like the barrier is broken, now we can
intermingling and so
do
on.
the soul cycles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hearth fires in family homes were left to burn out while the harvest was gathered, and after the harvest work was complete, celebrants joined with Druid priests to light a community fire using a wheel, and the wheel was considered a representation of the sun and used alongside, used with like prayers. Cattle were sacrificed, and participants took a flame from the communal bonfire back to their home to relight the hearth.
Okay. So it's sort of like community fuels us and let's go into this new year.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. It wasn't all, I mean, that's very nice. However, early texts present Samhain as a mandatory celebration, lasting 3 days and 3 nights, where the community was required to show themselves to local kings or chieftains. Failure to participate was believed to result in punishment from the gods, usually illness or death.
Never mind then. Well, but if you're dying near Samhain, you don't have to wait too long to get to the other side.
Well, unless you died toward the end of it, when the barriers
start to back up.
And then you have to wait another year.
Oh, yeah. I retract that. Never mind.
There was also a military aspect. This is from the History Channel, which I've used them as references before. So there was also a military aspect to Samhain in Ireland, with holiday thrones prepared for commanders of soldiers, and anyone who committed a crime or used their weapons during the celebration faced a death sentence.
Damn.
So it was a very serious thing. It was the most important festival that they had.
Yeah.
So they took it seriously. Yeah. And some documents mention 6 days of drinking alcohol to excess, typically mead or beer, along with gluttonous feasts. Which, if it's the end of the harvest, you have all this food anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then again, like, is there also like
I'm sure
let's all do preserves and stuff?
That's why I'm like, because they said that the hearth would keep burning as they were doing the harvest, like the last of the harvest.
Okay.
So I'm guessing that if you're gonna be preserving I'm just guessing, by the way. This is all conjecture. Conjecture? Is that the
conjecture?
Word? Yeah. I'm assuming if you're preserving stuff, you're preserving it as you pick it. So you're kind of preserving as the harvest is going on.
Yeah.
And maybe this is just the last of it that they're kind of like, okay, and now we're preparing like a feast to celebrate the end of the harvest and the beginning of winter.
Yeah. subsistence farmers of Dreary Midnight, weigh in. I don't know if we have any of y'all, but if that is a thing that y'all do, and you know more about that, please weigh in at drearymidnightpodcast@gmail.com. Anyway.
Also, remember, those are just some of the documents that mentioned that.
Yeah.
Not all of the...
Yeah.
So these are all just different theories, because we don't actually know that much about the Celts.
Oh, yeah, because the Anglo-Saxons were being asshats.
There's just not a lot of written documentation.
Okay.
And stuff, too.
Cool.
So, when the Romans conquered the Celts in the 1st century CE, they added their own festivals of Feralia, which is commemorating the passing of the dead, and of Pomona, the goddess of the harvest.
Okay.
So they were like, oh, this makes sense. We're going to put our beliefs there, too, because it kind of...
It jives with it.
Jives with it, exactly.
That was very common for the Romans, from what I understand.
Yeah, there's like, hey, I like this tradition. We're going to put our own traditions on top of this tradition.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was quite common for the Greeks and Romans, is just sort of like, okay, just pay slightly more taxes to us for the roads, and maybe change a name or two, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As Christianity gained a foothold in pagan communities, church leaders attempted to reframe Samhain as a Christian celebration. Okay. So this is still the first theory, which is that that Halloween is from Samhain. Okay. So, in the early 7th century, and this is fact, but in the early 7th century, Pope Boniface IV consecrated the Pantheon in Rome, formerly a temple to all the gods, as a church dedicated to Saint Mary and all the martyrs, and ordered that date, 13th of May, should be celebrated every year. It became All Saints' Day, a day to honor all the saints, and later, at the behest of Pope Urban IV, a day specially to honor those saints who didn't have a festival day of their own.
And this is in May?
So Boniface basically said, okay, so we're going to make this a May holiday, and we're going to use this to honor all the saints.
Okay.
And all the martyrs.
Okay. But wouldn't that be taking over Beltane and not Samhain?
There's a different... Well, it depends on which theory, because there's basically a theory that it originated from Samhain, and then there's a theory that it's a completely Christian holiday.
Okay.
So if you're going by the theory that it originated from Samhain, then it basically was like a holiday to kind of not necessarily take over, but maybe, hey, this is the holiday that we should be celebrating the dead and stuff because of the saints. But then, like, obviously they kept doing Halloween, or pre-Halloween, so the Samhain holiday.
Nice.
And then if you go by the theory that it was an entirely Christian holiday, then it doesn't really matter when it was.
Yeah.
So, in the 8th century, on November 1st, Pope Gregory III dedicated a chapel to all the saints in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. And
what
year
was this again?
Gregory III.
Yeah, but what year?
This was in the 8th century.
Okay. Cool.
And then Gregory IV made the festival universal throughout the church, and the 1st of November has subsequently become All Saints' Day for the Western Church.
Okay.
Basically, it started off in May, and then they changed it to be in November. Cool. November 1st instead. Cool. So the original All Saints' Day was May 13th. The new All Saints' Day, a century later, was or maybe it was the 9th century by the time. I'm just going to look up.
Anyway, the reason I initially asked about the years is because the very first pope who quit, I think, was also a Gregory, but that was the end of the 13th century.
There's been a lot of Gregorys. He was Bishop of Rome and ruler of the Papal States from October 827 to his death.
So in the 9th century.
Yeah.
Is when it moved from May to October, November.
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
So, neither new holiday did away with the pagan aspects of the celebration. October 31st became known as All Hallows' Eve, or Halloween, and contained much of the traditional pagan practices.
Okay. So the fires and the muster and the hearths and stuff. Okay.
So basically, since November 1st was All Saints' Day, or All Hallows' Day, then All Hallows Eve
Oh, it was the day before.
The day before,
like Christmas
which was the
Eve
31st.
and Christmas Day. Yeah.
Which then turned into the Halloween.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, by the end of the Middle Ages, the secular and the sacred days had merged. The Reformation basically put an end to the religious holiday among Protestants, but in Britain, Britain especially, Halloween continued to be celebrated as a secular holiday. Along with other festivities, the celebration of Halloween was largely forbidden among the early American colonists, which is what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Although in the 1800s, there developed festivals that marked the harvest and incorporated elements of Halloween.
So there is some sort of like end of the season, let's all hang out type of thing, even it's not religious. It's still like, we all have to do a thing, let's all hang out while we finish this job type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Also, like, nowadays, I feel like a lot more schools and people are kind of more doing, like, Harvest Fest as opposed to, like, Halloween.
Yeah.
Kind of just to make it more, I guess...
universal. Potentially universal.
Yeah.
Probably also... at least a couple of them are probably lobbied from the waspy moms who who don't want the Halloween parade. But anyway.
Starting at the beginning of the 19th century... large numbers of immigrants, namely the Irish, went to the United States.
Okay.
And they took their Halloween traditions with them. And America adopted these traditions, and by the 20th century, Halloween became one of the principal U.S. holidays. And nowadays, it's one of the most popular holidays behind Christmas. So that's the, basically, theory that it was originated from Samhain and then went into, like, Christianity. But I do want to say that there's some academics that believe Halloween began solely as a Christian holiday. They state that Halloween, as the eve of All Saints' Day, originated entirely independent of Samhain, and some even question the existence of a specific pan-Celtic religious festival, which took place on the 31st of November.
October?
Sorry, 31st October to 1st November.
Okay. So I think, it could... be a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what I think.
Yeah. Because, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be that, like, was there a thing that happened within these 48 hours?
Yeah.
It could well be, again, it's just, we have to do this thing at the end of this season, and the timelines aren't always going to be exact unless that is very important to that culture. It's like the same kind of vibes, and one thing kind of overtakes the other on purpose or not.
Yeah. So I'm gonna read a few little quotes of people who think maybe the Halloween doesn't actually have anything to do with Samhain. Mm-hmm. So, in his book Halloween: From Pagan Ritual to Party Night, Nicholas, which I love that title.
Yeah.
Nicholas Rogers states. Festivals commemorating the saints, as opposed to the original Christian martyrs, appear to have been observed by 800. In England and Germany, the celebration took place on 1st November. In Ireland, it was commemorated on 20th of April, a chronology that contradicts the widely held view that the November date was chosen to Christianize the festival of Samhain. This is from Pockets of Superstitions of the British Isles by Steve Roud. Certainly, the festival of Samhain, meaning summer's end, was by far the most important of the 4 quarter days in the medieval Irish calendar, and there was a sense that this was the time of year when the physical and supernatural worlds were closest and magical things could happen. But however strong the evidence in Ireland, in Wales it was 1st of May and New Year, which took precedence. In Scotland, there is hardly any mention of it till much later, and Anglo-Saxon England even less.
So it wasn't as big of a deal as All Saints might have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least it wasn't celebrated throughout that entire...
Yeah. Oh, so, like, a couple of communities might have kept up with it, but it wasn't going to be, like, everybody and their brother and their cousin from 20 miles away.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's implying it's basically not big enough a deal. Not a big enough deal to try to, like...
try and usurp.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not like Christmas trying to usurp Saturnalia or something, which we could also do a Christmas special on.
I want to.
Okay.
Origin of Christmas. Maybe you could do that one. This is a lot of research.
Yeah. All right, so one more quote you said.
Yeah, so there's one more quote. This is from Stations of the Sun, A History of the Ritual Year in Britain by Ronald Hutton. it says, heavy Irish immigration into the Scottish Highlands and Isles in the early Middle Ages carried the name Samhain here, in local variations. But to the Welsh, the day was, I'm so sorry, this is not going to be pronounced correctly, Calan Gaeth, the first day of winter, and the night before was termed Nos Galan Gae, Winter's Eve. Perhaps significantly, the earliest Welsh literature attributes no arcane significance to these dates, in sharp contrast to May Eve, and describes no gatherings then, in sharp contrast to New Year. It must be concluded, therefore, that the medieval records furnish no evidence that 1st November was a major pan-Celtic festival, and none of religious ceremonies, even where it was observed. An Anglo-Saxon counterpart is difficult either to prove or to dismiss completely. So he's basically saying there probably wasn't this huge, similar to the last quote, there probably wasn't this huge thing, and if it was not as big of a deal as it was, as modern people make it out to be.
It wasn't as if the entire nation was doing the exact same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Counterpoint to that is sort of, because I feel like it's at that time and place in history, I feel like every community is going to be a little more insular.
Yeah.
So sure, you're not doing a completely pan-Celtic thing where everybody on the British Isles is going to this place and that place and this place and that place.
No pilgrimages or anything.
But it could be that something happens at roughly this time of year in some capacity.
So basically, my thought is like it could have been a culmination of things that makes Halloween, but I don't know if it was from one specific thing, but more of a like, which we go back to with a lot of our episodes. Everybody has some sort of shadow people. Everybody has some sort of dragon. Everybody has, like, there's always this one thing. The end of the harvest, the beginning of winter, the end of winter. Those are all very important and significant times, especially in the olden days where you really had to like survive the winter. Either way, the modern celebration of Halloween is a mix of like evolved and evolving traditions and influences. So let's look at some modern Halloween traditions and where they come from.
Okay.
So this is kind of going to be amalgamation. That's like my favorite word right now. It's like it's hard to trace the exact origins for everything, but so I'm just going to say some origins. So when it comes to costumes and trick-or-treating, they kind of go hand in hand. One origin, it comes from Samhain, because during Samhain, villagers disguised themselves in costumes made of animal skins to drive away phantom visitors. So they impersonated evil spirits by dressing up in costumes and blackening their faces or with masks. Since it was believed that the realm of the living and the dead would overlap, allowing the dead to roam the earth again, it was assumed that evil spirits were among the spirits returning to the living. So dressing up as spirits, these villagers were trying to fool actual spirits into thinking that they were like spirits as well, to protect themselves from those that were evil. So it was like a disguise, which is also where we get the term guising, which is something that was also basically an old costuming thing. So there was also in the Middle Ages a tradition of mumming, which is like actors who put on little plays and put on costumes and stuff, and going door to door performing short scenes in exchange for food and drink. First of all, and can we bring back mumming, because I want to open my door and see like a little portion of a play.
I mean, isn't that what we already do with the ghost tours?
Technically. But to give me food and drink in the form of money, please.
Yes. Pay my grocery bill, please.
Oh, also during Samhain, apparently, sometimes banquet tables were prepared and food was left out to placate spirits. So, like I said, costuming and trick-or-treating, they're kind of intertwined here. With the emergence of the church's All Hallows Eve, All Souls Day, and All Saints Day, many of the traditions of Samhain were adapted into these festivities. By the 11th century, the church has adapted the Celtic costume tradition to dressing up as saints, angels, or demons during the celebration.
Okay.
Which, I went to Catholic school.
Okay.
I promise this is a relevant tangent.
Okay.
I went to Catholic school from kindergarten to 12th grade. Okay. In my elementary, we didn't have Halloween.
Okay.
We had maybe like a harvest, like fair.
Okay.
But really, we celebrated All Saints Day.
Okay.
Instead of Halloween. So we would dress up as saints, and we would each choose like a saint to dress up as.
Okay.
And I think each class had a theme. So the kindergartners always dress as angels. Because
that tracks.
They always just angels. They're 5. They don't really know.
That's the most effort that you're gonna get out of a 5-year-old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when I think as we got older, we got more like into the, how do I say it? The older you get, the more you can understand the concept of time and centuries and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So
if you know roughly that there's going to be a difference between a 14th century saint and a 6th century saint.
Exactly.
Okay.
So for first grade, it was basically like very basic like Bible type saints like Moses and
Mary.
Noah and Mary. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know who I dressed up as in first grade? Eve. And I have
I
a
didn't
picture.
realize she was a saint.
She's the first woman. I mean,
Okay.
feminist icon Celeste. Am I right?
Yeah. I'm a little curious and also a little concerned how a first grader dressed up as Eve, given the concepts of Halloween costumes of Eve that I've seen.
I'm going to show you because it's very cute, and it's also my mom has that picture framed on her
Mantelpiece?
It's her dresser.
Oh.
So hold on, there it is.
Okay. Very cute, not at all concerning. All right.
So basically, I'll put it on the
Instagram.
but it's me. And I'm basically wearing, it's not like a
skin
ghillie
tone-
suit.
It's like a skin tone bodysuit with like leaves glued onto the bodysuit.
Yeah,
So-
to make it look like, it's basically like a swimsuit made out of leaves.
Okay.
But I also have like the actual like long sleeve shirt
Yeah.
and pants and a little flower crown.
Nice.
Which
It
this
is
just
adorable.
kickstarted my cottagecore obsession probably. Because, I mean, what 6-year-old doesn't want to wear a flower crown and feel like a princess, even though
Yeah.
you're pretending to be the mother of humanity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Either way, so so even this started as the 11th century, like a medieval thing of
Okay.
dressing up as saints and stuff.
Yeah.
But it prevails even to this day.
Yeah.
Because
Or at least till 1999.
yeah, and then like they would have us do when we got older, like maybe 5th grade, we'd have to do like little reports on the saints that we chose.
Okay.
So that we actually knew like it was.
Oh,
yeah.
so it's actually sort of educational
Yeah.
in addition to dressing up.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it'd be like, oh yeah, I'm this martyr who died because during this time and
Okay.
because of this and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Cool.
So yeah,
Yeah.
just the little tangent I wanted to share part
Yeah.
of my my Halloween background.
Love it.
Guising, which was something I mentioned before, from disguising. Guising traditions began in the Middle Ages. Children and sometimes poor adults would dress up in costumes and go around door to door during All Hallowtide and Christmastide, begging for food or money in exchange for songs and prayers, often said on behalf of the dead. This was called souling, and the children were called soulers, since they would usually be rewarded with soul cakes.
Okay.
So soul cakes were small round cakes, often with a cross marked on top, that represented a soul being freed from purgatory when the cake was eaten.
Okay.
Okay, so they were generally sweet cakes, including ingredients such as nutmeg, ginger, cinnamon, raisins. Soulers would go door to door singing songs and saying prayers for the souls of the givers and their friends. So they would be like, I'll pray for your soul and the souls of your compatriots. As
Okay.
long as you
Give me food.
give me food. Please, I am a child and I am
Yes.
hungry.
Yes.
I have an example of a 19th century souling song, which is very recent because it's 19th century, but I'm just going to say it because I don't know what the tune is.
Okay.
A soul, a soul, a soul cake. Please, good missus, a soul cake. An apple, a pear, a plum, or a cherry. Any good thing to make us all merry. 1 for Peter, 2 for Paul, 3 for him who made us all.
Oh.
It's cute, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And this would be not just during Hallowstide, but also during Christmas.
Okay.
So,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Souling ultimately gave rise to guising in the UK, starting in the 19th century, with children dressing up and begging for things like fruit and money. In order to earn this token, they'd often tell jokes, sing songs, play an instrument, recite a poem, or perform some other way. Not
Perform
unlike...
a trick, one would say, in order to retrieve their treat.
Yeah. Can we bring that back? I want kids to, like, work for the candy that I give them. I want to hear little poems and songs and see a little dance.
Did you never do the whole trick-or-treat, smell my feet? Give me something good to eat. If you don't know, Karen will pull down your underwear.
But see, this kind of the guising kind, like the souling kind of stuff, is more like the benefit of the giver, as opposed to if you don't give me something, I will be mean to you, and I want the children to be nice.
That's fair.
You know,
that is fair. Yeah.
The practice of guising made its way to North America, probably brought over by the Scottish and Irish in the late 19th or early 20th century. The first documented reference was in 1911 in North America.
Okay.
And then trick-or-treating, instead of guising on Halloween, popped up in North America in the 1920s and 30s. The term and the practice slowly spread with a brief respite during World War II.
Okay, that makes sense.
After the World War II sugar rations were lifted, Halloween's popularity saw a huge spike, and within 5 years, trick-or-treating was a near ubiquitous practice throughout North America.
Okay.
Once guising morphed into trick-or-treating, and children no longer performed for treats, but instead vandalized and extorted their confectionaries. The earliest known reference to trick-or-treat was printed in the November 4th, 1927 edition of the Blackie, Alberta, Canada Herald. And the quote is, "Halloween provided an opportunity for real strenuous fun. No real damage was done except to the temper of some who had to hunt for wagon wheels, gates, wagons, barrels, etc., much of which decorated the front streets. The youthful tormentors were at the back door in front, demanding edible plunder by the word trick-or-treats, to which the inmates gladly responded and sent the robbers away rejoicing."
Okay.
So they would, like, take apart people's shit.
Oh my god.
That's what it said. It sounds like. Because it says no real damage was done except to the temper of some who had to hunt for wagon wheels, gates, wagons, barrels, etc., much of which decorated the front street.
Okay.
Which means they were, like, vandalizing people's things to get candy. Which is not a tradition I want to bring back.
Yeah, no shit.
So that was so trick-or-treating as a term didn't become a thing until the 1920s.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's basically like a brief history of trick-or-treating and how it went from Samhain to mumming to souling to this now. Yeah. And now we just say
trick-or-treat.
Trick-or-treat.
Yeah.
The threat is always there.
Yes.
The threat is always moving. And now, jack-o'-lanterns.
All right.
Ooh, I know, there's so many traditions I could speak about, but I wanted to just get the most popular ones, which was costuming, trick-or-treating, and jack-o'-lanterns.
All right.
There's a few variations on jack-o'-lanterns. There's the name jack-o'-lantern. It's an old British term it's Old British, technically, for man with a lantern. And a folk name for the mysterious flickering lights seen over wetlands at night and associated with fairies and ghosts playing pranks on travelers.
So it's the Will-o'-the-Wisp category.
Yes.
Yeah.
So jack-o'-lanterns can be a Will-o'-the-Wisp category. That's the first theory.
Yeah.
I actually have, which you pointed out, an excerpt from the Virginia Folk Legends. That's basically just like a very short excerpt on these will-o'-the-wisp type
Yeah.
jack-o'-lanterns.
Yeah. So Virginia Folk Legends, if I recall correctly, was part of the Virginia Writers Project back in like 20s, 30s, 40s. And so they did a lot of kind of short interviews, especially if you look up where all the counties are, because they said like interview date in the county that they were interviewed in. It's a lot of like rural Appalachia, like Wise County, which is like that little far corner of Virginia and that kind of thing. So it's really short stuff, things you can only get from talking to your great grandpa on the porch in 1927.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And this one is this is Jack-o'-lanterns, Lights in the Woods. Catherine Newman, interviewed by Laura Virginia Hale in Front Royal, Warren County on June 29, 1942.
Okay.
So, I used to know a lot of all that... I used to know a lot of that stuff you axing about, but I reckon I done forgot most of it, or just can't reflect it offhand. I remember how the old folks used to tell about jack-o'-lanterns. My informant, and then this is Laura saying, my informant insisted that the middle syllable was ma. That'd lead you off at night. You know, back in those days, there wasn't lights everywhere to guide a body like 'tis today. If you started to go somewhere at night, you'd try to spot a light on some neighbor's house and follow that. On real dark, foggy nights, one of them jack-o'-lanterns would appear in front of someone traveling along a lonely road or path, looking just like a light way off in someone's window, so as to make that person follow it. Then it'd lead them off into the thickets or swamp somewhere. Why, I've heard of folks being lost all night following one of them jack-o'-lanterns. So if a body had to go somewhere at night and didn't want to be led off by a jack-o'-lantern, he turned his pockets wrong side out. That'd keep him away, they said. First of all, what a fun... Yeah. I love reading those little
because
accents.
So it's like the 20s, 30s, 40s, so they're writing down... it's in the area where it's like they're writing it down accent intact in the text, which is like... I think there is some discussion on whether or not that's an okay thing to do nowadays, but...
it's fun, though, because it kind of puts you more into the... I think, environment.
Yeah.
Of like, this is really just somebody in some porch talking about...
It's 1942, and remember back at the turn of the century when this happened and that happened. Yeah.
So that's one version of jack-o'-lanterns. Now, there's also the story that you've probably heard. I'm sure you've heard it.
Is this the Irish one?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm going to guess, and then you're going to tell me how right I am, or not. So, as I recall, there's this guy. His name is Jack, and he's kind of an ass. Moderately an ass. And Jack dies, and he goes to the pearly gates, and St. Peter is like, what makes you think you could get in here? You don't belong here, you belong down in hell. He goes to hell. Any of the devils like, nah, bruh. And so eventually he somehow has to like get some kind of light in a gourd or something or other. Yeah. And he's stuck wandering forever.
Yeah. So I'll tell, that's basically the footnotes version. There's there's a little more to it, which was there's an Irish myth about a man named Stingy Jack. According to the story, Stingy Jack invited the devil to have a drink with him.
Okay.
True to his name, Stingy Jack didn't want to pay for his drink, so he convinced the devil to turn himself into a coin so that Jack could use it to buy their drinks. Once the devil did so, Jack decided to keep the money and put it in his pocket next to a silver cross, which prevented the devil from changing back into his original form. Jack eventually freed the devil under the condition that he would not bother Jack for 1 year, and that should Jack die, he would not claim his soul. The next year, Jack again tricked the devil into climbing a tree to pick a piece of fruit. While he was up in the tree, Jack carved the sign of the cross into the tree's bark so that the devil could not come down until the devil promised Jack to not bother him for 10 more years. Soon after, Jack died. As the legend goes, God would not allow such an unsavory figure into heaven, and the devil, upset by the trick Jack had played on him and keeping his word not to claim his soul, would not allow Jack into hell. He sent Jack Off into the dark night with only a burning coal to light his way, Jack put the coal into a carved-out turnip and has been roaming the earth with it ever since. The Irish began to refer to this ghostly figure as Jack-o'-the-lantern and then simply Jack-o'-lantern.
Cool.
Yeah, so you basically got it.
Yeah.
The only thing is the devil was, like, pissed at him because he kept tricking him.
Well, thing is, Jack says, don't bother me or claim me for 10 years. And if he dies within the decade, then technically...
He kept his word.
Yeah.
I guess Jack just didn't count for the fact that heaven wouldn't want him either.
Yeah.
So...
Or that he would die within the decade.
Exactly.
Anyway.
So, in Ireland and Scotland, people began to make their own versions of jack-lanterns by carving faces into turnips and placing them into windows or near doors to frighten away stingy Jack and other wandering evil spirits. In England, large beets were used, and in America, people found the pumpkin to be more plentiful because it's native to the Americas, and it's easier to carve than turnips. But it remained customary for children to carry jack-o'-lanterns door to door to represent the souls of the dead while begging for treats.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are the 3 traditions I wanted to touch on, and also just Halloween in general. There's also, like, other Halloween traditions that mostly come from Irish folklores, like the party games of, like, bobbing for apples, and it, like, if you, like, you grab an apple or you bite into it or something. First of all, apples are really prevalent in party games, probably because they're very easy to find during that
especially
time.
around this time of year. Yeah.
But a lot of these, like, Irish games were, like, divination games. It's like, find out what your fate is. If you carve an apple, the peel will fall in the initial of your true love or something. Stuff like that. And you can look up those games. It's really fun. But also, can we bring back old traditions?
Yeah.
Dang it, because these seem like so much fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically a brief history of Halloween.
All right.
Any thoughts?
I just love this holiday even more now. But yeah, so that was fun. If you also enjoyed, if you have any spooky stories of your own to share, thoughts, any corrections, stories, knowledge that we don't have, email us drearymidnightpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to support the show by giving us money, patreon.com/drearymidnight is the place to do that.
Give us some soul cakes.
Yes. Buy us a soul cake or several. And if you want to follow us on socials, we are on Instagram, instagram.com/drearymidnightpod. And with all that said, maybe you should bring back mumming.
Yeah.
Or
bring back mumming, tell a little tale, do a little dance, and
make a little love.
Get down tonight.
Safe travels home on this dreary midnight. Good night.
Good night.